I can help write this as a fictional, emotionally dramatic soulmate story rather than presenting it as a real spiritual or factual claim. Your soulmate just ended a relationship because of you. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. This story begins with a moment that changed everything. Somewhere, in the quiet hours when the world seemed asleep, someone sat alone with thoughts they could no longer silence. They had spent months pretending everything was fine. They smiled when people expected them to smile. They stayed in conversations that no longer inspired them. They remained in a relationship that looked complete from the outside but felt empty on the inside. Every day they told themselves tomorrow would feel different. Every week they promised themselves they simply needed more time. Yet deep within their heart, something refused to settle. Something continued whispering that they were living a life that no longer reflected who they had become. This message is for you because our story follows that turning point, the moment someone finally chose honesty over comfort. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. The decision they made was not sudden. It was not impulsive. It was built from hundreds of quiet moments that nobody else noticed. It came from conversations that felt forced, laughter that no longer reached the heart, and dreams that slowly stopped including the future they once imagined. They realized that staying out of guilt would only create more pain for everyone involved. They understood that kindness is not pretending everything is perfect. Sometimes kindness means admitting that two people are no longer walking toward the same destination. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Then something unexpected happened. During that season of reflection, memories of you began returning. Not because you asked them to. Not because you demanded attention. Simply because certain people leave lasting impressions through their authenticity. They remembered your kindness. They remembered your patience. They remembered how conversations with you felt effortless instead of exhausting. They remembered feeling understood rather than judged. They remembered feeling encouraged rather than criticized. Those memories became a mirror, showing them the difference between simply existing and feeling genuinely alive. This story is not about leaving one person for another. It is about someone realizing they could no longer remain in a relationship that had already ended emotionally long before any words were spoken. You became part of that realization not because you caused the ending, but because your authenticity reminded them what emotional honesty could feel like. Sometimes meeting someone genuine encourages people to evaluate every area of their lives. It inspires questions they have avoided for years. It encourages growth they never expected. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They wrestled with guilt. They questioned themselves repeatedly. Was this selfish? Was this the right decision? Could things still be repaired? They gave themselves every possible reason to stay. They revisited old promises. They remembered good memories. They tried once again to convince themselves that effort alone could restore what had quietly disappeared. But effort cannot replace emotional truth. Respect cannot be built upon pretending. Love cannot flourish where honesty is absent. Night after night they reflected. They thought about the future they truly wanted. They imagined waking up years later wondering why they ignored their own heart. That possibility frightened them more than making a difficult decision today. Eventually they realized that remaining in a relationship without genuine emotional commitment would hurt everyone involved. They understood that ending something with compassion could be more loving than continuing something without authenticity. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. During those quiet evenings your memory continued appearing unexpectedly. They remembered your resilience. They remembered your ability to remain calm during uncertainty. They remembered your empathy. They remembered how you listened without trying to control or change anyone. They admired your emotional maturity. Those memories were not fantasies. They became reminders that healthy connection should create peace rather than constant confusion. The more they reflected, the more they understood that they wanted a future built upon honesty. They no longer wanted relationships sustained by habit alone. They wanted conversations filled with sincerity. They wanted trust instead of assumptions. They wanted emotional safety instead of emotional distance. Whether or not the future would ever include you remained unknown, but one thing became clear to them: they could no longer remain where their heart had already quietly departed. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Ending the relationship was one of the hardest conversations they had ever experienced. There were tears. There were long pauses. There were moments of sadness and gratitude existing together. They expressed appreciation for everything they had shared while acknowledging that appreciation alone could not create the future either person truly deserved. They chose honesty even though honesty hurt. They chose integrity even though integrity required courage. Afterward, silence filled the room. For the first time in a long time, they felt sadness, but they also felt relief. Relief that they had stopped pretending. Relief that they had finally aligned their actions with their heart. Relief that they were no longer living according to expectations that no longer reflected who they had become. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. As days passed, they began reflecting on everything they had learned. They realized how much fear had influenced previous decisions. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of change. Fear of uncertainty. Yet they also realized something greater: courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward despite fear because authenticity matters more. They thought about you again. They remembered your encouragement. They remembered your quiet confidence. They remembered how your presence inspired them to become more honest with themselves. Whether you knew it or not, your example had encouraged growth. Not because you rescued them, but because genuine people naturally inspire others to pursue healthier, more authentic lives. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Perhaps the greatest lesson of this story is not about romance at all. It is about choosing truth over comfort. It is about recognizing when a chapter has ended even if turning the page feels difficult. It is about understanding that healthy relationships require openness, mutual effort, respect, and emotional honesty from everyone involved. As this chapter closes, one truth remains. Genuine hearts leave lasting impressions. Authentic kindness is never wasted. Emotional maturity inspires transformation in ways that are often invisible until much later. And sometimes the most important choice a person makes is not choosing someone else, it is choosing to live honestly, so that whatever relationship comes next has the strongest possible foundation built on truth rather than fear. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. The days after that difficult goodbye felt strangely quiet. There were no dramatic celebrations, no instant happiness, and no feeling that every question had suddenly been answered. Instead, there was silence, the kind of silence that forces a person to face themselves honestly. For the first time in a long while, they were no longer pretending everything was fine. They no longer had to convince themselves that staying in a relationship without emotional certainty was the right thing to do. The decision had been made, but now came the harder part, learning how to rebuild a life based on truth instead of habit. Every morning they woke with mixed emotions. Some moments brought relief. Other moments brought sadness. They questioned themselves repeatedly. Did I do the right thing? Could I have tried harder? Was there another way? These questions appeared naturally because meaningful decisions are rarely simple. They understood that ending a relationship respectfully did not erase the memories they had shared or the appreciation they still carried. Two things could exist at once. They could feel grateful for the past while accepting that it was time to move toward a different future. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. As they reflected, they noticed something unusual. Whenever they imagined the kind of relationship they truly hoped to build one day, certain qualities always appeared. Peace, trust, honesty, emotional safety, mutual respect, consistency. And without forcing the comparison, memories of you quietly entered those reflections. They remembered how conversations with you never felt like competitions. They remembered how you listened carefully before responding. They remembered how you encouraged growth instead of demanding perfection. Those memories became reminders of the kind of emotional environment they wanted to create in their future. This story is not about replacing one person with another. It is about recognizing what healthy connection feels like after experiencing emotional distance. Sometimes another person's authenticity becomes the mirror that helps us understand what has been missing from our own lives. That realization does not happen overnight. It develops gradually through reflection, experience, and emotional growth. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They began noticing how often they had ignored their own intuition in the past. There had been small moments when their heart whispered that something wasn't right, yet they continued moving forward because they feared hurting someone else's feelings. They believed sacrificing their own emotional truth was the responsible choice. Eventually they discovered that avoiding honesty only delayed pain rather than preventing it. The longer they ignored those feelings, the heavier they became. One evening they found themselves remembering a conversation they once shared with you. It wasn't a dramatic conversation. It wasn't filled with extraordinary words. Yet something about it remained unforgettable. You had spoken with kindness. You had shown patience. You had offered encouragement without expecting anything in return. At the time they appreciated it, but now they understood it differently. They realized genuine compassion leaves an impression that often becomes clearer with time. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They also began recognizing changes within themselves. They no longer wanted relationships built upon assumptions. They wanted open conversations. They wanted emotional honesty. They wanted the freedom to express fears without worrying they would be misunderstood. They realized that vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is the beginning of genuine trust. That understanding transformed the way they viewed every future relationship. As weeks passed, they became more comfortable sitting quietly with their thoughts. Instead of avoiding difficult emotions, they welcomed them as teachers. Every memory helped them understand themselves better. Every reflection revealed another lesson. They discovered that growth rarely arrives through comfort alone. Growth often appears after difficult decisions, honest conversations, and moments of uncertainty. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. During this season they found themselves wondering about you more often. They wondered how you were doing. They hoped you were pursuing your dreams. They hoped you were surrounded by people who appreciated your kindness. They hoped life had been gentle with your heart. Whether they admitted it aloud or not, your happiness mattered to them. That realization surprised them because it revealed something deeper than simple curiosity. It revealed genuine care. They also recognized something important about themselves. In the past they often searched for certainty before making emotional decisions. Now they understood certainty rarely comes first. Instead, honesty comes first. Courage comes first. The willingness to accept uncertainty comes first. Only afterward does clarity begin to appear. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Imagine someone standing at the edge of a new chapter, carrying everything they learned from previous experiences but refusing to let old disappointments define the future. That is where they found themselves now. They were no longer interested in repeating old emotional patterns. They wanted healthier communication. They wanted deeper understanding. They wanted relationships where both people felt seen, respected, and appreciated. Your memory remained connected to those hopes because you represented qualities they admired. Your patience reminded them that understanding matters. Your resilience reminded them that difficult seasons eventually pass. Your authenticity reminded them that pretending is never as powerful as living honestly. Those qualities continued influencing them long after ordinary memories would have faded. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. There were still difficult days. Healing is rarely a straight path. Sometimes old memories resurfaced unexpectedly. Sometimes sadness returned without warning. Yet each time those emotions appeared, they handled them differently than before. Instead of running away, they allowed themselves to feel them completely. They understood that healing requires honesty with oneself before honesty can exist with another person. Perhaps the greatest discovery they made during this chapter was that love should never require abandoning one's authentic self. Healthy relationships encourage growth rather than fear. They create space for openness rather than silence. They inspire confidence rather than constant uncertainty. Once they understood this truth, there was no desire to return to old patterns. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Whatever the future may hold, they now carry a deeper appreciation for emotional honesty than ever before. They understand that meaningful people should never be taken for granted. They understand that genuine kindness deserves recognition. They understand that peaceful connections are among life's greatest blessings. And perhaps that is the message quietly unfolding through this story. Sometimes the most important ending is not the end of a relationship. Sometimes it is the end of pretending, the end of ignoring the heart, and the end of living according to fear instead of truth. From that ending comes the possibility of a future built upon authenticity, mutual respect, and genuine connection, a future where every choice reflects the person they have finally become. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Time has a quiet way of revealing truths that emotions alone cannot explain. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became a season of reflection. The noise that once surrounded their life began to fade, leaving only honest thoughts behind. Without constant distractions, they found themselves examining every decision they had made, every conversation they had avoided, and every feeling they had tried to ignore. It was no longer about what other people expected from them. It was about whether they could look at themselves honestly and say they were living a life that reflected who they truly were. For the first time in years, they realized that authenticity was no longer optional. It had become necessary. Each morning felt different than before. Instead of waking up with the weight of pretending, they woke with a quiet determination to understand themselves more deeply. They started taking long walks, spending time alone with their thoughts, and reflecting on the experiences that had shaped them. They realized that every relationship teaches something valuable. Some teach patience. Some teach resilience. Some teach forgiveness. Others teach the importance of setting boundaries. Looking back, they no longer viewed the past through anger or regret. They viewed it through gratitude for the lessons it had offered. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. During those quiet moments, your memory continued appearing naturally. Not because they forced themselves to think about you, but because certain people become part of the emotional map of our lives. They remembered your kindness. They remembered the calmness in your voice during difficult conversations. They remembered how you never tried to impress anyone by pretending to be someone else. Your authenticity stood out because it was effortless. The more they reflected, the more they understood that authenticity is one of the rarest qualities a person can possess. One afternoon they found an old photograph that reminded them of a happier season. It wasn't even a picture of you. Yet somehow it brought back memories connected to conversations, shared laughter, and moments when life felt lighter. They smiled, not because everything had been perfect, but because they finally understood the value of genuine moments. They realized happiness is often built through small acts of kindness rather than dramatic events. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. As they continued healing, they began noticing changes in the way they interacted with everyone around them. They became more patient. They listened more carefully. They apologized more sincerely when they made mistakes. They expressed appreciation more often. They stopped assuming people already knew how much they mattered. Instead, they began telling them. This transformation surprised even those closest to them. Friends commented that they seemed calmer. Family members noticed they smiled more naturally. They had not become a different person. They had simply become a more honest version of themselves. One evening they sat beneath a quiet sky watching the sun disappear beyond the horizon. It reminded them that endings are often beautiful because they create space for new beginnings. They realized they had spent years fearing endings when, in reality, some endings become the foundation for healthier futures. That understanding brought unexpected peace. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They also began recognizing something about courage. They once believed courage meant never feeling afraid. Now they understood courage means moving forward even while uncertainty still exists. It means having difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. It means choosing honesty over convenience. It means allowing yourself to become vulnerable even when previous experiences encourage caution. That lesson changed everything. As the weeks passed, they started writing in a journal. Every page contained reflections they had never spoken aloud. They wrote about mistakes they wished they could undo. They wrote about moments they wished they had appreciated more deeply. They wrote about dreams they had postponed because fear seemed stronger than hope. Somewhere between those pages, your name appeared, not as an obsession, but as part of the story of their emotional growth. They recognized that meeting genuine people changes us, even if life takes unexpected turns afterward. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They often wondered what you might be doing. They imagined you pursuing your goals, continuing your personal growth, and becoming an even stronger version of yourself. Rather than imagining unrealistic scenarios, they simply hoped life was treating you well. They hoped you had found reasons to smile. They hoped your kindness was being appreciated by the people around you. Those hopes came from a place of sincere respect rather than expectation. Slowly they began understanding another important truth. Healthy relationships are not built upon perfection. They are built upon mutual effort. Two imperfect people choosing honesty every day will always create something stronger than two people pretending everything is fine. This realization became one of the greatest lessons they carried into the future. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. There were still moments when loneliness visited unexpectedly. Healing never follows a perfectly straight path. Certain songs brought back memories. Familiar places reminded them of conversations they once had. Small details awakened emotions they thought had already settled. Yet instead of resisting those feelings, they accepted them. They understood that remembering does not always mean wanting to return. Sometimes remembering simply means appreciating the chapter that helped shape who you became. With every passing day, gratitude slowly replaced regret. Instead of asking why things happened, they began asking what those experiences had taught them. The answer surprised them. They had learned patience. They had learned humility. They had learned the importance of emotional honesty. Most importantly, they had learned never to ignore their own hearts simply because speaking the truth felt uncomfortable. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They realized that meaningful people enter our lives for reasons beyond immediate understanding. Some challenge us to grow. Some inspire us to become kinder. Some remind us of the person we truly want to become. Your influence belonged to that final group. Whether you realized it or not, your authenticity encouraged them to examine their own life with greater honesty. That gift remained with them long after ordinary conversations had ended. As another season arrived, they looked in the mirror and saw someone different, not because their appearance had changed, but because their perspective had changed. They no longer measured success by appearances or by other people's expectations. They measured it by integrity. They measured it by peace. They measured it by whether their choices aligned with the values they carried inside their heart. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. The future remained uncertain, as it always does for everyone. Yet uncertainty no longer frightened them the way it once had. They had discovered that living honestly brings a peace that pretending never can. Whatever tomorrow might bring, they wanted every relationship, every conversation, and every important decision to reflect authenticity rather than fear. And perhaps that is where this chapter truly leads. Not toward perfect endings or guaranteed outcomes, but toward emotional maturity. Toward understanding that love grows strongest where honesty lives. Toward recognizing that genuine kindness leaves lasting impressions. Toward believing that every difficult decision made with compassion can become the beginning of a healthier future. Sometimes the greatest transformation is not finding someone new. Sometimes it is becoming someone who is finally ready to give and receive love with openness, courage, respect, and a heart that is no longer afraid to live truthfully. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Every meaningful story eventually reaches a moment where the past no longer controls the future. It is not because the memories disappear. It is because the people carrying those memories become stronger, wiser, and more honest than they were before. That is where this story arrives now. After weeks of reflection, difficult conversations, quiet evenings, and countless moments of self-discovery, they finally understood something they had been searching for all along. Real love is not built on fear. It is not sustained by pretending. It is not strengthened by silence. It grows through honesty, respect, compassion, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths with an open heart. They looked back at everything that had happened without resentment. For the first time, they could appreciate every chapter without wishing to erase any of it. Even the painful moments had shaped them. Even the disappointments had taught valuable lessons. Every misunderstanding had encouraged better communication. Every difficult goodbye had revealed the importance of emotional honesty. Every season of loneliness had reminded them that learning to be at peace with yourself is the foundation of every healthy relationship.